Yo, what is up guys, Bob87 King here, back again with another video, and in this video we're going to be doing another casting video, which I have not done in a hot minute, but again, I like doing them, so why not make one about Chris Mclean's Nightmare cast. Essentially casting people that Chris Mclean hates or would just never want to see again, which honestly I thought would be easier than it actually was, to be honest, to where I only have like 13 or 14 people on this cast right now. And I did debate on adding people that Chef hates too, but I feel like there's only really like two people you could really say, and that's Izzy and DJ, just because again, Izzy's obviously like kind of crazy and I don't think Chef really likes her. And then for DJ, I think Chef just thinks DJ's a massive disappointment. But even then, it's like, I don't really feel like there's a need to really add Chef into it if there's only going to be two people anyways. At least that's just the only two that came to mind at the time of making this video. So yeah, we are going through every single generation in chronological order and just me explaining why I put them on the cast or who I didn't put on the cast. So yeah, let's just start off with Total Drama Island. From the original cast, I did consider Eva just because I feel like Eva is someone who Chris is afraid of. But again, I don't really think Chris really cares about Eva. Same thing with Katie and Sadie. Again, I feel like Chris probably found them really annoying, but again, not enough to really put them on the cast. Again, same thing with Beth. I feel like a lot of these people Chris just finds kind of annoying more so than anything, to where it's like, yeah, he probably doesn't really like them, but I don't think he would be like grotesque to be like, ew, why are they on the cast again? I did almost cast Noah just because I feel like Chris doesn't really like Noah or really care for his humor. Probably just because they're mostly just jabs like Chris, so I feel like for that reason you could cast Noah, but then again, I just don't think Chris really cares about Noah, or truthfully thinks about Noah anyway, so yeah. But who I did end up casting, I mean, seriously, for a cast like this, how can you not cast Ezekiel? I truly think if it weren't for that episode where Ezekiel tries to unalive Chris in All Stars, I feel like there is a debate to have Zeke on this cast or not, to where yes, Zeke's life was ruined, but it's like, I feel like it's a case where Ezekiel just went crazy, and I feel like you could argue more that Ezekiel probably has more hate towards Chris than Chris did for Ezekiel. Again, Chris was just poking fun at Z, he didn't really care, he was just like, ha ha ha, it's whatever, it's Ezekiel. So yeah, but I feel like for that reason alone, in Total Drama All Stars, where he did try to unalive Chris is like afraid of Zeke now, to where like I feel like he would just be so paranoid if Zeke was on this cast, and for that reason I had to cast Ezekiel. I did cast Courtney. Again, I feel like for a villain of the show, I feel like Chris just actively does not like Courtney, and to be honest, for fair reasons. I mean, she did put a lawsuit on him to where she was put on action with a whole bunch of regulations and stuff, to where Chris literally read that out, planning to make her a target. He wanted her to be a massive target. I mean, she was going to be anyways, but it's like, he did active stuff to like kind of just ruin her positioning even more. And then on World Tour, I mean, he obviously knew that if there was a tiebreaker challenge, that Courtney was smoked plainly, so he just kind of kicked her off. I mean, obviously the budget thing was this thing too, but it's like, realistically, does Chris Mclean actually care? Probably not. And then for All Stars, he gets insanely mad at her for trying to feed the interns like bird poop, which obviously, yeah, isn't great, but it's like, you aren't feeding your interns anyways. Why are you trying to rub this into Courtney so much? And again, he also loves poking fun at her, but I feel like unlike the other contestants that we will be talking about of why I didn't cast them, I feel like Chris just kind of enjoys making fun of them more so of like a malicious intent. Obviously there is still malicious intent, it's Chris Mclean that we're talking about, but it's like, I feel like there's genuine hate that comes with it for Courtney, to where yeah, Courtney's on this cast. I also did put Duncan on this cast, and I actually did debate this for a while. While yes, Chris was obviously very mad at Duncan for blowing up his cottage and he put him in big boy prison, so there's obviously that, but I feel like Chris Mclean also recognizes the fact that Duncan is incredible TV. And say whatever you want about Duncan as a character, I know he's not the most likable person, but you cannot call him boring. He's very entertaining as a character in general. So for that reason, I feel like I could see a way that Chris would be annoyed that Duncan's on the cast, but also happy at the same time. And also putting Duncan on the cast means that you have Duncan back together, so I guess that's fun also as well. I did also put Sierra on the cast, mainly just because, again, she exposed a lot of stuff from Chris's past, and I'm pretty sure Chris hated that and was just cringing at it throughout the entire episode in World Tour. And also she blew up his plane as well, so... And also just because Chris just seems to find Sierra very annoying, which I cannot blame him. Sierra's my least favorite character. Could be second least favorite to Wayne, but it's like, still, Sierra's a really bad character in general. So yeah, for all those three reasons, again, Sierra's on the cast. And the final person I did cast from Generation 1 is Blaley, simply because, again, Chris hated her throughout her entire stint of World Tour. She literally called him out saying how she was supposed to be the host of the show, and then he just pushed her out of the plane. So I think that alone is reasonable enough for her to be on the cast. And also just because, again, Chris never seemed to actually really like her. Outside of the fact when he was like glazing her during her Blainerific song, I just feel like Blaley fits the cast pretty well. Moving on to Revenge of the Island, where I only casted one person from this cast, which honestly I feel weird about. Again, obviously there's characters like Stacy, but I feel like while Chris, yes, found Stacy annoying, it's like, would he really hate the fact that Stacy's on the cast? Probably not. Again, I don't think he really cared for Anne-Maria. I think he just enjoyed poking fun at Brick as well. And obviously the big one that people could argue is Dakota, but I feel like it's a case where while Dakota could have hate towards Chris, I don't think Chris really thinks about Dakota at all. Like, I don't think he's losing sleep over the fact that he mutated a teenage girl. So yeah, I didn't really feel the need to put him on. And the only person I did put on from this cast, it's pretty obvious in my opinion, and that's Scott. Simply because, I mean, Scott ends up flinging Chris in a pile of poop for the entire episode, and then Chris gets revenge by literally putting him in a catapult with Fang. And literally Fang tears him apart, and Chris has no remorse, and he's literally mocking Scott as well, causing Scott to cry, which obviously, yes, as a kid, I enjoyed it, but now being older, at least almost being an adult, I can kind of say that's very messed up, obviously, even though I didn't like Scott during Revenge of the Island. It's like, that's a bit too much to be laughing at a minor's pain. Just me, though. Again, also in All-Stars, to where Scott would constantly say something smart, and then Chris would make the challenge 10 times harder. He also would poke fun at Scott, and just straight up, I feel like Chris just does not like Scott at all, so yeah, Scott's on the cast. Also, Scott's also going to be with Courtney, so that should be interesting as well. So yeah, Scott's on the cast. Moving on to most people's nightmare season, we do have Pockettail Island, and obviously there is Beardo, but I feel like, again, does Chris Mclean really think about Beardo? Probably not. There is Sky, but I feel like Sky, he just likes making fun of Sky, essentially. He just likes poking fun at it for drama. And the same thing can be said about Dave, to where I did consider casting Dave, even though you could argue Dave should be on the cast just because Chris really did bully Dave, but I just feel like it was more so just out of fun than just hatred, truthfully. But yeah, I did cast a bunch of people from Pocket Talent, so let's just get to who I casted. I did cast Leonard, mainly just because I think Chris Mclean just views Leonard as a complete joke, and not the type of joke where he actually finds it funny, just the type of joke where he just kind of wants him off his screen. Not to mention Don from the Redonkulous race hates him too, and I feel like that could also play in a factor to Chris's decision to just hate on Leonard even more, even though we don't even know Chris's opinions about Leonard in Redonkulous race. I just feel like Chris Mclean is someone who just does not like Leonard at all, and just wasn't a fan of his whole magic stick. Next up, we do have Ella, which obviously Ella is going to be on the cast. I mean, Chris literally single-handedly removed her from the season just because she kept on singing, which really annoyed him. I feel like Chris would be worried that if Ella came back, she would just sing again, so I feel like Ella's a perfect fit for the season. I did put Topher on the cast. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, Topher literally took Chris's phone. He had a whole plan to take over the show, even though it was really never going to work. I just feel like Chris Mclean was completely annoyed by him, loved toying him, and loved seeing him go, and I don't think Chris Mclean would ever want Topher back. But I feel like on a season where production's handpicking the cast just to mess with Chris, I think Topher is a shoe fit for the season. We got a double header on this one, and that is Max and Scarlet. For Max, I feel like it's mainly just because, again, I don't think Chris Mclean sees why Max is a really good character. Again, I love Max, and I also love Leonard. I think they're complete doofuses, and that's why they're really funny on screen. But I feel like Chris Mclean does not see that at all and just finds them more so just really annoying. Kind of like the entire cast of Pockettail Island, but whatever. And then we have Scarlet. I mean, this is pretty much obvious. Scarlet literally pretty much ruined the season in a way, or at least ruined the fact that, like, the island was just animatronic, and she kind of just exposed that, so I feel like Chris Mclean would hate her as well. She also tried to hold the island ransom too, so that probably got Chris really annoyed. What am I talking about? It did get Chris annoyed. Again, I don't think Chris likes either of them, and he literally called them, well, he said, like, he would like to name them nameless, so yeah, there's that. And the final person we have on the cast from Pockettail Island is Sugar, mainly just because, I mean, the entire crap rap tree or whatever. Again, I think Chris found Sugar to be absolutely revolting, disgusting, nasty, all types of things. And to be honest, that was kind of the point of Sugar's character, but it's like, I feel like Chris Mclean absolutely hates her and would probably never want to see her again. So, yeah. Sugar's on the cast. Straight up, I think from the reboot cast, honestly, I only casted one person from the season, but it's like, I think Chris Mclean really does like most people from this cast. Again, I didn't really consider someone like a Millie or Ripper, people who I feel like Chris would find annoying, but again, there's not that much proof there to show. However, there was one episode where Chris was literally bullying this contestant, and that is MK. I mean, this stems from the fact that MK took Chris's hair gel, and you know, after Chris found out it was her, he obviously gets a bear to pretty much beat her up throughout the entire merge episode, so there's that. And I also just feel like Chris doesn't really respect MK as a player. I don't think he respects the type of under-the-radar game who will also cheat beyond belief, to where I feel like Chris would find that very annoying as well. To where, yeah, MK's on the cast. And you could say the same for Julia, but I feel like Chris at least views Julia as great TV. To where for MK, it's just like, I don't think Chris really liked MK that much. So yeah, she's on the cast. And there you have it. That is the cast of Chris's Nightmare season. And probably I will be doing a dream casting Chris Mclean's like best season of all time with some of his all-time favorite cast members, to where I think that would also be very interesting too. I think also doing like a Chris Mclean season rankings, I think that would be interesting as well. I do just overall think that Chris Mclean videos are just pretty interesting in general, just because Chris Mclean is obviously the host of the show. And yeah, I think the cast is honestly pretty solid overall. I do enjoy most of these characters, and I don't, outside of really Sierra and kind of Ella, I feel like every single character has something to really offer, to where, yeah, sounds pretty good. And yeah, that's pretty much the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, peace out.